Please welcome back Tony Gunn to the stage, and we're going to do a podcast recording of the Tony Gunn Show. And joining him will be Ms. Meaghan Ziemba from Mavens of Manufacturing, and Paul Van Metre, co-founder of ProShop ERP. Y'all come on up. Go get it. Have fun.
Thank you. That's a good song.
It's about changes, right? We had to do changes. I'm not going to sit down just quite yet, and I'm very happy that all of you are here. The original podcast that we had set up for this closing keynote, thanks to Roger, had a very good friend of ours, Mr. Drew Crow, who is doing really wonderful things out in Philadelphia right now. And I'm going to ask a favor of all of you, because we have somebody here today that we have not seen for a while. A hero of mine, a friend of mine, someone very famous in the industry who has gone through something recently. And I would love if you could please all stand up for me, put your hands together for my friend, Mr. Jason Zenger. Let's see if he comes in here.
I'll give you a hug. Yeah, Meaghan, come here. Good to see you. You too. Tony, thanks for having me.
You know, this is an honor for us, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We are going to talk about changes in manufacturing, and that's the point of this podcast. Before we get into that, though, Jason, I've asked you behind the stage.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Could this be with green?
Oh, let's find out.
No, I know I'm green, you're green.
Yeah, let me check that real quick. But what we're going to do, Jason, we're going to talk about changes, but I would love if you could share your story for us. Is that all right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because some folks in here definitely know you and know your story.
Right.
And some folks in here do not.
Yeah,
and your story is one of the most motivational pieces of art that I've ever heard in my life.
Thank
and
you.
I think it's fair to share that with everyone here.
I appreciate that, Tony.
Welcome back to the Gunn Show, my friends. This is the VIP edition.
So I was one of those like workout geeks, like, you know, kind of like Meaghan. You know, I was in the gym 10 hours a week. I was, you know, putting turmeric in my tea in the morning, just like crazy about health. Never thought anything was going to happen to me, indestructible. And then just one night, it was about 1 or 2 in the morning, and I had this just aching pain in my back, of all places, and kind of went across my back, down my arms a little bit. And I usually tough everything out. I mean, I've been through some pain before, and I've even been woken up in the middle of the night. I think, you know, I'm one of those guys, I'm like so stubborn. I think that I was going through something and I should have gone to the hospital, and God was like, well, I'm going to spare him this one time, and, you know, we'll see what happens the next time. So this time I finally told my wife, I was like, you got to take me to the hospital. I was like, something's going on here and it's not right. So from the moment that and I got to try to make a really long story short, because otherwise I could talk for the next hour.
We got like an hour and a half, and it's a good story. The rest of us won't have to work today.
I'm going to write a book, so we're going to really get the whole story then. But so I was taken by the ambulance. It was 2 in the morning. My wife, you know, very smart woman, she told the ambulance not to put the sirens on so they wouldn't wake up my kids. So I was taken out without disturbing the neighborhood or anything like that. From the moment that I left the house, I don't remember anything for about 10 days. So I was basically in a life or death situation. My wife was there, you know, praying over me, crying like everybody else that I knew. You know, you all were praying for me, just thousands and thousands of people. When I went into that ambulance, from the time I went from the ambulance to the hospital, I had coded out 3 times. So flatline 3 times, and usually they don't bring people back from that. Fortunately, they did. They saw something in me where they needed to, you know, give it another try. So kind of fast forward through this. During that week to 10 days that I was basically in a coma, I guess you would say, I went through what the doctors have since told me is called ICU delirium, where it's the only way that I could equate this is if you were to have a dream. Normally when you have a dream or a nightmare, you wake up from it. Well, this was not anything that I would wake up from, and everything felt real. It felt like I was awake and I was there and I was going through this nightmare, and it was scary, let me tell you. And the whole thing is going to come out when I do write the book eventually, and maybe Tony, you and I need to talk about that.
Yes, please.
But I ended up waking up in about 10 days, and the weird thing about the delirium is that even after you wake up, you still feel the effects of it. Like you feel like, just to tell you one of the stories, during one of the episodes, I felt like somebody wanted to kill me. There was actually a couple episodes like that. And so even after I was awake, I still felt like this was going on. So my mind had still not registered that that was delirium and this is real now. Like I was still going through something. So it was very, very strange. So started to get better. Basically, my heart had weakened to about 10% viability, and I couldn't do very simple things like get out of a chair. So for weeks and weeks, I had to have therapists come in, help me to just stand up. On December, so the heart attack was on December 8th. On December 29th, I ended up having a heart transplant. So I have a new heart, which is also very interesting. Everything with that is going great. The big problem with why I'm in a wheelchair is because I had what's called necrosis. So a lot of times when they're trying to save your life, they're drawing all the blood from your appendages to your heart and your vital organs. And so what happened was my feet and my fingers all basically died. So like the ends of my fingers were black and hard as a rock. And same thing with my feet. And so, eventually I had to have them amputated. And so now it's just, setting new goals and having this change in your life, which we're going to be talking about today, and setting a new vision about where you're going to go. And, in about 6 weeks, I'm going to have new prosthetic fingers, which are going to be made by a USA manufacturer in Washington, right? Yep. One of Paul's clients. And then I'm going to have new feet hopefully by the end of the year, and hopefully I'll be walking by the end of the year. So when you see me at the next conference, I should be walking around. So that's my goal.
Megan, I'm not crying. You're crying.
Stop.
Leave me alone, okay?
Okay, can I?
Don't look.
Can I please share a funny? So, he fired me.
It was the best thing that I ever did for her.
I used to work for making chips, and I got fired by them. And yes, initially I was angry, but with years, I wouldn't have been able to start Mavens if that didn't happen.
Yes,
I've never had bad feelings towards any
I
of
love
you
it.
guys, but when I heard this happen to Jason, it just really proved how strong our community is in numbers, because so many people came together to pray for you and your wife and your family.
Yes.
And I just think it's cool that now you're part of his healing journey. And this is why we have to get these stories out there.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, Megan, which is, the community, and the community of manufacturing is just, it's so strong. It's amazing. I love it. So,
Paul, can we talk a little bit about the prosthetics company as well? Because, the topic, I'm making sure I don't forget. It's committing to change. If this isn't committing to change, I don't know what
Sometimes
is.
you get committed.
When, and I still remember these big events in your life. I just remember exactly where I was when I heard the news of your heart attack. But when it came out that you had to get, prosthetics, I asked, who that was, and turns out it's a company called Naked Prosthetics in Olympia, Washington, and they use ProShop to run their entire manufacturing
which is amazing.
process. So all the machining, all the composites, all the assembly, everything. So he's gonna have hands powered by ProShop.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's a super cool story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
All right, now that I've been crying a little bit, and maybe some people out there as well, and thank you for being here, let's have a little fun.
Yes.
Let's have a little fun. This is the closing keynote. We have an audience here that wants to pick our brains a little bit, I think. And thank goodness for ChatGPT, because I came up with ChatGPT came up with some really fun questions for us today. And we don't each have to answer every single one of them, but some of these are really clever and really enjoyable. And I think your insights will allow the audiences here today to really enjoy this closing keynote. And then go dress up like their favorite musician and go party tonight. That's the end of the show, right, Roger?
Forward to that.
Yeah? Roger, what are you dressing up as?
Country Western, buddy.
There you go.
Garth Brooks.
So I'm going to start with you, Jason, since you haven't talked enough yet. What's scarier for manufacturers, do you think? A new technology or a competitor who's already using it?
Oh, definitely a competitor who's already using it. But I think that it should be motivating, if anything. It should tell you that you need to reflect on where you are and commit to making some kind of change. I think that a reluctance to change is something that has put many a manufacturer out of business. I remember this vividly. Being a tooling distributor, and I had a really good relationship with my dad in the business, and he gave me a lot of leeway to just do things, which helped to start making chips and a lot of other things. But there was another manufacturer that was a client of ours, and I remember because I was probably in my 20s, and he was probably late 30s, early 40s or something like that. And his dad, who was quite a bit older, was still in the business, and his dad would not let his son make any kind of changes in the business. And they had not adopted CNC. This was a long time ago. It's 25 years ago, let's say. They had not adopted CNC at the time, and we were like, you have to do this, or you're going to go out of business. And sure enough, he did. And I think that you should look at your competition and say, times are not any different than they are now. Like when you look at, say, robotics, for example, you need to think about adopting it. You can't say, well, I'm doing fine now, I'm getting all the jobs that I need and I'm profitable. No, like you need to look at this. You could have been saying that same thing about running parts on a Bridgeport or something like that 25 years ago, and you're going to get left behind if you don't at least consider it.
Yeah, agreed. Paul, would you say that a lot of adopting new technology has to do with competition? You say no at first, then you see them doing it, you're like, shh, I got to do it too.
I'd turn that question around and say, how can you be the company that is leading that change that other companies are now afraid of? As Roger said in the last breakout, manufacturing is notoriously slow adopters of technology. I think there's a lot of fear of change. There's a lot of risk on the table because these are all, mostly small family businesses. You make a wrong move, it could be devastating. But as they say, most growth comes on the other side of something uncomfortable. So I think it's just important to really have a mindset of continuous improvement, of technology adoption, and going to shows like NTMA and other trade shows and just looking for what is the thing that I might adopt soon that's just coming out to become more competitive. And I think it's also just let alone on an individual company by company basis, it's just imperative that this community here in North America rise to the challenge of all this onshoring and reshoring. It's making sure that that we have the strongest manufacturing industry in the world. Yeah, it's so important.
And Meaghan, based on that, if you remember the other day when we did this keynote, I had everyone raise their hands to say, do you know what the latest and greatest technology is, right? Do you feel like you can find it out there? And I would say only about half the room felt confident that they knew. So how would you say we can go about, what advice would you give to go about learning where to find how to be that leader, as you just said, Paul?
I did research for my next opportunity because I wanted to write a book. And I came across this statistic that 70% of small business owners want to fund their retirement through the sale of their business, when in fact only 20% of them actually had a saleable business. And it broke my heart anticipating the fact that baby boomers, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and in fact it was a train. And so I really wanted to do something about that. So I wrote a book called Scaling the Exit. The purpose of the book was to articulate a strategy for small to medium-sized business owners to increase the value of their business to the extent that they could actually sell it and fund their retirement. And that was really the first iteration of what became EBITDA Growth Systems and our brand promise, which is to double the valuation of small, medium-sized businesses, specifically in terms of an exit, but double their valuation or we give them their money back.
I think a good place to go is trade shows. I know there's been a lot of debate whether or not there's a good return on trade shows, so some companies are pulling out of those, but even if you don't exhibit them, I think you should still attend them, because there's going to be companies who are taking that risk, especially the larger companies, and trying some of these new technologies out. Definitely go to the universities and see what they're playing around with, because a lot of these ideas are starting at the university level, where they're coming up with, how do we solve this problem, and what sort of components can we use to build it. And then the other question you asked is how many people like using social media, and I was the only one that raised the hand. But if you go on social media, you can find out a lot of information on some of those feeds, especially LinkedIn and Instagram. There's a lot of machine videos on Instagram, and there might not be any talk about on it. It might just be music, like whatever Rolling Stones music they put with the machine fail, but you're still at least seeing that technology, and it's going to start raising questions in your mind. So, but I like in-person events versus going on social media, just because then you can talk to the people. So if it's conferences like these, if it's trade shows like IMTS, I would definitely recommend people going there.
Yeah, you beat me to my follow-up question, actually, which was going to be, there's a lot of small and medium-sized shops out there that don't have the time and maybe not the resources to go in person to do these things. So online is a great backup resource.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, posting machine videos is how Tony elevated himself to where he is now. Am I right?
I think it was hip hop music and bass jumping.
Yeah,
maybe surfing.
Okay, that was one level, but the next step, I remember you were doing that a lot.
I think when I started working with Fifth Axis Work Holding,
right.
They have a really great Instagram
channel,
that was, right?
Yeah,
and that was about the time where COVID hit, and we were all kind of put in our rooms like on bad behavior, and we couldn't go anywhere or do anything. So I was like, well, my buddy Titan is dominating the Facebook at this time, right? Was dominating the Facebook world. My buddy John Saunders is dominating YouTube.
Right.
My colleagues over at Fifth Axis are dominating Instagram. Where do I go and what do I do? Check out LinkedIn.
That was smart.
And that was the route I went. And it was 100% for entertainment and education at the same time. And in doing so, here we are today, best friends with each other, laughing on stage.
There you go.
Hopefully semi-entertaining some folks out there as well.
But there's also Ian from Practical Machinist. He does a lot of educational videos.
He does.
And then I just met this guy. He's Patriot Machinist. I think his name is Kenny. But he shows a lot of fail videos too. So he's pushing his machines and how he's using it. I think he uses a Mugi stuff on his videos. So I mean, it's educational and it's fun to watch when some of that stuff fails. But
oh gosh, yeah.
That's just
I don't want it to be me anymore, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun when somebody else does it.
It's not fun for you guys, but it's fun for me to watch it. So.
All right, slide into the next question. This is one you said you liked, Meaghan, but since you've already read it, we're going to start with you again, Jason. It's kind of fun. Yeah. Let's see. How can small shops outpace the giants when it comes to adopting new strategies?
When it comes to, I think from a strategic standpoint, the playing field is pretty level. I think, obviously the larger shops have more resources from a monetary standpoint, but I don't think that there's such a wide gap. I think the price of a lot of the new technology has come down a lot. I mean, you could buy one of our co-hosts in Making Chips. Not that we're trying to make this a Making Chips podcast or anything, Tony.
Go for it. It's all right. People, it's still going to go on my channel. You can say whatever you want about it. Kidding, of course.
Mike Hain, he just bought a welder. I think it was a laser welder. He paid about 10 grand or 20 grand or something like that, and it has taken him from an hour to manufacture this part to 15 minutes. So the fact that you could spend, $10,000 or $20,000 to, cut your time down that significantly, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. You could purchase. I mean, we sell cobots for machine tending. I mean, you could have a turnkey system, trained, everything for $150,000, and that can help you to be just so much more productive than what you are now. If you were to install those kind of cobots. So I don't. There's a certain level where the very, very large manufacturers, and especially the OEMs, are going to be able to take on technology that is not viable for a small shop. But I still think that there's a lot of place for those small shops to be able to do it. So I'm still encouraging my son to think about opening up a machine shop as a career, when he gets to that point, because I still think, even 6-7 years from now, there's still going to be an opportunity to grow a company, from the ground up.
Sure. Paul, I would say that your company, ProShop, as beneficial as it is, and as helpful as it is, there's still a bit of time you must invest in motivating people to adapt to it, right?
Sure.
How do we do that? Because we're playing off of what Jason's saying here. If the gap's not that big, but we still have to motivate and get them to believe in it, how do you do that? How do you go about that?
Well, I'd just go back a little bit. I think that from a strategy perspective, there's probably pretty level. I think small companies have a big advantage in the actual tactical execution of being nimble, trying new things, not being bureaucratic about it. I was just at FabTech 2 days ago and talking with a guy that was running the machine shop at SpaceX. And yeah, that's a big company, but they're a relative startup compared to most of the others. And I wondered, because they had just launched the big heavy duty and then caught it on the little chopsticks. We were all just blown away. And I said, what allows your company to move at 10 times the speed of anyone else? And he said, it's just a sense of urgency. We all have it. He says it comes from Elon. But I think, our companies can have that same sense of urgency to adopt new technology, again, to be nimble, try things, fail forward, learn from it, and a lot of times the big companies are just too heavy. It's like turning a big ship.
Yeah, they're too bureaucratic. Yeah.
So as far as us and trying to convince someone to adopt technology, it often comes down to really trying to understand their business and the pain points they're actually having, and show just practical, reasonable, and social proof ways that other companies have solved those same things. There's pretty much every company out here hopefully has a continuous improvement mindset. If you don't, you definitely need to have that. And a lot of times those improvements, those pain point reductions come from technology. And again, it's supporting them in through the concerns and the fears that they have, that people just like you have done this before. We got your back, it's okay, but sometimes that's still a hard conversation.
Yeah, I've had the great pleasure to work inside of SpaceX, actually, since you mentioned them. And I remember getting a tour, and they're like, we work about 18 hours a day. It's like, dude, that'll get stuff done. Yeah. I mean... And
the guy I talked to said they enjoy it. Like, they love it. They're mission-driven. They have that, that mission is so important to all of them, and they're all in.
Well, I think that's one of the most important things when you talk about change is, you're always going to have change and pain in your life, personally and in business, and you need to be able to cast a better vision or a better mission for where you're going. Otherwise, people aren't going to be motivated. If you say that, well, our business is to do this every single day, and that's where we see ourselves 5 years from now, well, that's not very motivating, But if you say our vision is to catch a spacecraft as it descends back to the Earth, well, that's something really to be motivated by. Or in 10 years, we're going to be on Mars. And not every company can cast this grand vision like SpaceX can, but you can cast a vision. You can say, we're going to be a partner that helps SpaceX in order to be a part of that. I mean, that's the important thing. And there's so many manufacturers, probably several in this room, who are part of that mission, and just to be a part of somebody else's mission is going to be motivating for your team as well, and allow them to be motivated to adopt that change.
Yeah, agreed. Meaghan, how everyone who's here today, the opening keynote, what Roger wanted us to discuss this entire time is, we know that reshoring, nearshoring, onshoring, all this stuff is happening. We have committed to it. We talked about the infrastructure in the U.S. not being fully ready, but supporting through Mexico and Canada and that kind of thing. But the overall topic, truly committing to change, how important do you think embracing that change and truly committing to that change for all shops across the country and accepting it is to overall manufacturing in the U.S. for the next 5, 10, 20 years? I'm going to ask you guys the same question, because that opinion will vary. I think our answers will vary as well. And I think it's a very important topic to discuss about just the significance of the future of manufacturing, even though change can sometimes be the most difficult thing to do. How important it is to commit to that?
I think it's essential, and the uncomfortableness that comes with change, we just need to get over it and face it.
Easier said than done?
It is easier said than done, but I mean, we did a lot of things as a country to not prioritize manufacturing anymore, and now we're kind of seeing the results of that, and now we have to catch up with the rest of the world. So there's a lot of changes that we have to do, not just within the shops, but also within our educational institutions, within our own communities, within our leadership. We have to do a lot of changes so that, you know, we're going against social media. Nowadays, there's a lot of people that want to be on social media and make money putting their face on camera all the time, and not to talk about, you know, things in manufacturing, but to talk about, you know, what drama is going on in their life, what cosmetics they're using. I watch a lot of the cooking stuff, and that's okay, like that's great, but none of that stuff would be possible for them to even do if it wasn't for manufacturing. So we really need to bring the pride back into American manufacturing. We need to come together as a village, talk about it more, share it with our communities, talk about it on the airplane to 21-year-olds who want to do computer software development. I know my daughter, I brought her up yesterday, the reason why she's becoming a surgical nurse is because she loves Grey's Anatomy. So where's the TV series about manufacturing? I know we had Mike Rowe, who has the most amazing voice ever, but we need more people like that, and more cheerleaders and more stories, and we can't really do it if manufacturers keep saying, well, I'm too busy, I have to focus on this, but not that. We really need to invest in the marketing for manufacturing.
Yeah,
well, Tony's very dramatic, so I bet we could come up with some kind of drama manufacturing show.
I really have been thinking about it's cost versus execution. I'm trying to figure it out right now. A reality series with a trade school, and then some sort of comedy cartoon like South Park with manufacturing. I'm working on right now, I promise you.
Well, where's Jen? Where's Jen? Is she in here?
Not today.
Guess not. Yeah.
We did a workforce development thing, and I don't think I can talk about it, but it's basically just, you know, we got to share the stories about what manufacturing is doing for all of us, and you're a great story, Jason. So yeah, I'm waiting for that video to come out.
We will be sharing
you
that.
guys showing every step of the process, but even the steps before that, like all of the technology that was involved in saving your life, like you would not be here today if manufacturing didn't exist, because they needed all that stuff. So yeah, I think we need to make the conversation a little uncomfortable. We need to talk about national security. Right now, one of the stats that I got from Drew is there's 160,000 jobs available in submarine manufacturing, and if we don't fill those jobs, we're not going to hit the quota for the submarine. Did you know we need to make 3 submarines a year? I didn't know that until this year, and I'm like, huh, cool. Where are we going to get those?
It seems like a lot, but it
It
takes
is a lot. Those things are huge. So where are we going to get those people to do that? So yeah.
Same question, Paul.
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned before, you know, each company sort of is always hopefully on that journey to improve themselves, but I think it, as a community, as a manufacturing nation, it's just so important that we kind of come together to rise to the challenge of making enough airplanes, making enough submarines, making enough prosthetics. That's why I'm so passionate about the Thank a Machinist hashtag. Like, people need to know how essential machinists are to every single thing in the world, and the general public just doesn't know that. No. Yeah, I mean, it's at this point it's a point of national security, not just helping our economy grow. But there's a lot of threats in the world, and manufacturing is a way for North America to be a strong leader in that spot.
Yeah, same question, Jason.
Yeah, I think we all know the importance of it. I think, Paul and Meaghan clearly articulated that. But I think one of the big things is we don't know how to do it. Like, we don't know where to start. So there's, change management that we have to go through. It's, to equate it to what I went through, you wake up, before I had my heart attack, I had these certain goals that I wanted to achieve. Well, you know what? They're very different now. After I woke up, my goal was just to be able to stand up. Now my goal is I want to be able to walk by the end of the year. And the reason I say this is because we all need to look at our businesses and say, okay, what's my new vision? We can't just take a step, we can't just rest on what our vision was before. What's my new vision, and how do I break that down into what my new goals are? Because what happened in the past is in the past, and that's over. And even if you've invested in this way and that was the wrong direction, we'll stop and reassess what you're going through right now and say, okay, where should I be going? There's a lot of people that they want to double down on bad decisions, and you need to really take an opportunity on, I think a quarterly basis to say, what direction are we really going into, and are we making the decisions that are correct for that direction, or are we, messing around with something that we shouldn't be messing around with? I've come up with a, change management structure for my own business. I've come up with it for my life. And I think that it's important for everybody to really sit down and say, how do we make changes at our company? How do we communicate those changes to our team, to our clients, to everybody? Because it's a real thing. I mean, if you're not changing, you're not getting better. That's just the way it is. It's like that in life. It's as I'm always trying to make these analogies to life and business. But as a husband, if I'm not changing, that's not going to end up good for my marriage. That's where you see a lot of people ending up in divorce because they didn't change. So change is just vital, and you're going to go through pain in order to get there, but it's a lot less pain than if you don't make that change.
Yeah, that's well said. For anyone who's out there who heard Jason and I's joke about a reality TV show and the South Park sitcom, if you know anyone, I'm very serious. I have the camera equipment. If you know a trade school that's willing to do a reality show for about 6 months, I am very serious. If you know any artists out there who are willing to draw up some cartoons, I got some people right here that can do voiceovers just like it, all of manufacturing. We will make TV shows about manufacturing.
I love it.
Cool.
I've got some ideas too. I've had some ideas for many, many years, and I'd love to see it happen. So,
the more we say it out loud, the more we can manifest it. I believe in that.
I agree,
all right. I am a huge fan of not talking at people or preaching to people, but empowering people. Giving them, when they walk away from a session like this, a mission that they can apply to their lives to do better, right? And so I'm going to again ask all three of you the same question in this order, because I know they're going to be different. There's going to be advice that I think is worthwhile because you're each individually incredible. But if we could kind of pass on a message to everyone out here today that when they go home, when they go to their machine shop, when they're in their communities, what can an individual person do on their daily basis to support the awareness, to support the importance? We already mentioned national security threat. We already mentioned thriving shops and adapting these technologies that allow us to succeed, and that gap isn't so big as we might think it would be between a Boeing and your shop next door, right? You can apply your ERP systems and everything that goes along with it. So I'm a big fan that when somebody walks out of a conference that I'm a part of, they walk out and go, I feel empowered, I feel like I can do something, and I can make a difference in the world tomorrow because I've learned something today. So we'll start with you, Meaghan. If you were going to offer some advice to everyone here that's spent the entire time learning at Engage, which Roger, you've done, and your team, an amazing job, and Dan, wherever you are with the marketing and your team as well, wonderful job getting everyone here. And obviously I'm being long-winded to give you time to think because none of this has been prepped. But whenever you're ready, you may answer that question.
So my passion, I think people already know this about me. I really like getting younger generations excited about manufacturing, but I have a heart towards the underdogs, like people who might be, a little going against the grain, kind of rebellish, like to cause trouble. I think you can start at your local schools and you can go in and provide a presentation, or you can just talk to somebody that's on the street. Like, we have to be more proactive in putting our boots to the ground. So, I decided to start a podcast. I don't think that is for everyone because it's kind of hard and it
takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it does take a lot of time. But one of the things that I do personally is I sponsor kids to go to trade shows like IMTS. So I had a bus full of 40 high school students and then a small robotics team that I sponsor and mentor in Beloit. I brought them both to IMTS, and it really made a difference because the stuff that they're learning at the level they're learning it at is smaller scaled, right? So they don't know that the robots get as big as they do. They don't know the CNC machines get as big as they do. So when they went to IMTS, they were like completely blown away, and it got them more excited about the different careers. So I think if you can mentor someone, definitely do that. If you can sponsor a first robotics team, if you can donate parts, definitely do that. But you gotta be passionate about it and willing to want to do it and maintain consistency, because these kids are not dumb. And it was mentioned before in one of the earlier talks, they're quick to call you out on your BS. So just be consistent and be authentic, and don't always think, and this was also mentioned, it has to be intimate, right? It can't just be about making a profit or money all the time. Sometimes you just need to volunteer your time, and that goes a long way.
Could you imagine if every medium, small-sized shop said, I'm going to bring 5 kids from my local high school to an IMTS or something? I mean, certainly doable. And imagine what that would create in a 2-year span. Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Well, you participated in that event I held a long time ago where it was just virtual. You sent in a video.
I try to participate in all your events.
So, again, I just spent $150 on pizza, and the kids were fine. And they sat through every single one of those presentations. I think Aaron Prather was the one that got the most response out of them because he had robots moving around in the background. And he was talking about how you can actually program your PS2 controller to do things at home. And all the kids were like this. And when he said that, they were like, I can do what?
What's a PS2?
Yeah, they're like, I can do what with my video game controller? You mean I can program it and do all this stuff? So it was like super cool to see them kind of like just acting cool. And then they were like, oh, wait, I can do this. So it was cool to see that light turn on.
Yeah, and it's always fun when you see that engagement immediately happen.
Yeah.
It's one of the best parts. Paul, same thing for you. How can we empower the folks here today that walk away and can apply it to their lives?
Yeah, well, I think as, in an effort to get every company to sort of reach their highest potential, I would say most manufacturing founders are technicians in the business, right? They were a tool and die maker, a machinist. They decided to go off and start their own thing. Sometimes they may not be like the best visionary, but talking about vision, I think that's so critical to affect change in your business and ultimately in your communities, is to have a compelling vision that you can recruit and get people excited about. But a vision only gets you so far. In order to really create that mechanism, that engine of change on the flight out here, my wife and I were watching some little short masterclass segments, and they did one on the book Atomic Habits, and building systems that can reinforce your ability to make change. That's why most people don't do that, which is why a New Year's resolution peters out by the second week in January, right? If your goal is to get more fit, get your gym bag ready the night before. Get your water bottle filled. Set your alarm, and just know that I'm doing these little habits that are going to turn into something that becomes a real change. And you can do that same thing in your business, and people can then your employees can then get excited by those small changes. But again, it has to be driven by that vision. So if you're not, inherently a great vision maker, find someone that can help you do that or delegate that. But I think those two things combined can just be a real easy, pretty much zero cost way to really affect some positive change in your business.
Yeah, can I give you an air fist bump? That's a good one. Jason, same question.
Paul and I were aligned on one of them. So the idea of casting that vision, I think that's big for me. I think one of the best things that you could do is looking at what you do from a business perspective and say, well, what can I get rid of in order to achieve the change that I want to have in the future? So as an example for me, so we run a cutting tool distributorship, and this goes back many, many decades, and the core of our business used to be 100% that machine shop owners would come to our business and to our counter and purchase cutting tools, okay? The business had grown beyond that, where we were installing, vending machines, and we had account managers that were helping with continuous improvement. Well, it got to the point where that became more of a stumbling block for us than anything, and we decided that we were just going to kill that off as a revenue stream. So it was, say 10 or 20% of our business at the time, and we said we're going to kill it. And because it's a distraction from where we want to go. And it was a big risk doing that because you're essentially killing off part of your net income. But we were committed to the change that we were going to make and the vision that we were going towards, and we knew that it was the right decision, as hard as it was going to be. So what I would say is just look at what you're willing to eliminate from your business or eliminate from your life in order to reach the change that you want to get to. So that would be, so if you, I read the Bible every day, and the Bible has this term of putting off and putting on. So you want to put off something that you don't want to do and put on something that you do want to do. And to me, that's like just one of the most important things that you can do in order to make those positive changes.
Yeah, good advice by all three of you. Thank you for that. Something else I want to do, because when everyone raised their hand, they didn't think that they had had seen some of the latest and greatest technology. So what I want to ask is just, what one piece of tech that you've seen out there while traveling around that you think could really help a shop today, yesterday, tomorrow, immediately make an impact in their facility that might be old to some people, new to some people, but you believe that, almost like a light switch, that this piece of advice could help some of the shops and folks out there. Jason, I'll start with you. I think you might, I see you nodding your head like, oh, I got something, buddy. So we'll start with you and come back this way again.
So you want a specific piece of technology?
If you have one off the top of your head that you've seen while being on YouTube, while exploring, while traveling around, that you've adapted at Zenger's, your own company,
yeah.
You've seen change in I've been in the shops with you,
right? And
we've had these conversations with successful companies.
Yeah, I'm going to be biased, of course. So I would say, be committed to, from a continuous improvement standpoint, be committed to making changes to your tooling. I mean, a lot has been said about, oh, this is the greatest machine tool, and this is the greatest new welding technology, or whatever else it is. Well, there's a lot of other little things that don't cost a lot, where you can say, how can I make a 10% improvement, or how can I make a 20% improvement just by tweaking something that costs you $200, so, and running experiments and getting a, subject matter expert in order to help you. There's a lot of free advice out there. Free advice that will come to your shop in order to help you make changes. So it's such a low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. When it's accessible and darn near free, why not utilize it, right?
Yeah,
I 100% agree. Paul?
Well, of course, ProShop, of course.
Yeah, you're biased too.
We're
all a little biased.
When you made the bias joke, I looked at Paul, waiting for him to go, yeah, me too.
Well, you naturally talk about what you know the most about.
Honestly, though, getting rid of paper out of your business, whether you do it with ProShop or whatever, it's such an impactful move.
Yeah.
There's so much waste that's generated by paper. But I'm going to actually change directions. I'm going to say, I don't know any shop out there that has people knocking down the door to go work for them. And cobots are getting so accessible, so inexpensive, so easy to set up, even in a high-mix job shop environment. I think that's a real game changer. It's becoming, it's still pretty new tech, but it's becoming more accessible than it ever has before. And it can just, the change in how many hours you can run your spindle per day, per week, per month is just so dramatic. So that's one I would lean into.
We are definitely doing more and more videos on cobots all the time, of adaptation and success stories that come with that, for sure. And like you say, with the labor shortage, there's no jobs being taken. You're just filling voids, right?
Exactly.
You're exactly right. and the cobots, and I'll just tack onto this a little bit and just give a name drop to my buddy Misa out there in Formic. That's a company who will actually rent you a cobot for your facility at an hourly wage, much less than a human being would be. They will set up the project for you, make sure it works, not charge you a dime until it starts making you money. And then when you're done with that project, they'll pull it out again, or you can buy it based on the down payment of utilizing it the way you want to use it. I mean, that's what Formic does with cobots and making sure that you guys can succeed. It's almost like an insurance-proof rent a plan to automate your shop, and they'll do all the work for you. Why not give Formic a try, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know Misa as well, and it is a great business model, and I think that he's doing the right thing in order to help introduce those cobots to the manufacturers that don't have them currently.
Yeah, and it's a good way to get in to find out if you want to do it later.
Yeah.
You know, it's another like low-hanging fruit almost, right? And it's a partnership, and there's going to be a little bit of wheels turning to see how it can work best in the shop. But I've seen a 1908 machine that was being manually loaded and unloaded, put a cobot on it, and that thing was making parts all day and all night for pennies on the dollar because it was a rented machine. And so success stories are all the time out there. Meaghan, what do you think?
I think anything that's going to make the employees less intimidated using these advanced technologies is really cool. So I just did a partnership with Premier Tech, and they just released their Toma palletizer, but one of their selling points for that palletizer is how easy it is to take it out of the box and have your employees train on it right away as soon as it comes out of the box, and that's made possible through the software that they're using that they kind of created on their own. So I think anything that's software related to making things easier to use from the employees and having automation be less intimidating, especially to the small businesses, I think that's going to help really elevate the manufacturing. Because there are a lot of small to medium-sized businesses who are hesitant to have some of their processes automated because there's so much technology involved. They don't really know if they can get it up and running fast enough, and some of these solutions are really helping cut back on that training time and just keeping your production kind of flawless and seamless.
Yeah, I would play off of that as well, just from, I mean, working with Paul several times, working with the Datanomics folks, and say that the software side of things is often understated because it's not as cool to watch as what got us popular posting on LinkedIn, right? It's not the chips flying and the cool parts being machined. But the changes that can be made inside of a shop by truly understanding or adapting AI or what your machine is actually doing, you can optimize a facility so quickly that can almost, again, like that low-hanging fruit. And some of these companies, it could be a pretty penny to adapt to it, but everyone's got a good ROI. I mean, everyone I've worked with and talked to, Paul, you're in that world a lot. I mean, to me, when a shop has machines, the answer isn't always throwing more machines or more equipment. It's understanding the capability of what my machines can do and fully utilizing that technology to its best abilities, right?
Yeah, I would add something to what Meaghan said as well. So the manufacturer Dyson, who makes vacuums and all that kind of stuff,
my wife's favorite vacuum.
Is that? Yeah, I know. Yeah, I love it too. So they make it a requirement for all of their team members to take one of the vacuums apart and put it back together. So if you think about what Meaghan said is this palletizer is easy. Well, why not get your whole staff, your accounting staff, your marketing staff, get them to help with these things, get them touching the machines, getting involved on the shop floor just a little bit in order to, just get a sense of what's going on, and it's going to make their positions that much more meaningful. And, I think that, this younger generation, they're so used to immediate gratification for everything. So my son saved his money and bought a 3D printer, and, I'm helping him to get it going. And, I told him, I was like, you need to take these screws apart, put everything, together like it's supposed to be put together. I'm not going to help you do everything. Well, he just wants it running tomorrow. He wants me to do everything. I'm like, no, well, first of all, my fingers, it's hard to turn a wrench, but so you're going to have to do it for that reason. But, he needs to do it. He needs to put his hands on there. He needs to take the screws apart and get it going so that he takes that ownership of that machine and really, is prideful for what he created. And I think you could do that same thing with the rest of your staff, even in a manufacturing facility. Get your engineers off behind the computer and helping to put the machine tool together or whatever else that you need to do.
Hi everybody, Amy Teal, CEO and co-founder of Shop Floor Coffee, proudly a women-owned business that's supporting the manufacturing community.
Mike Franz, CIO, co-founder of Shop Floor Coffee. Thanks everybody for tuning in to check us out. Amy, tell us a little bit about Shop Floor Coffee.
So we're here to give back to the manufacturing community through purchases of coffee. So every purchase you make, we donate a portion of those proceeds back to help workforce development initiatives.
We can't tell you how much it means to us to help support the great manufacturing community. We've been involved with it for like 20 years, and we know there's issues around finding good people, finding people that really want to be involved in the industry, and we want to start by giving back to that, giving back to the programs, getting kids involved with these awesome programs. There's robotics, there's computer software, there's so many cool things involved with the industry that people just aren't aware of. We want to help raise that awareness by giving back in a little way that we can.
And really, we came up with the idea of shop floor coffee because there are two complaints on a shop floor. It's the coffee and the toilet paper. We can't do anything about the toilet paper, but we can help you get better tasting coffee on your shop floor while helping the community. So shopfloorcoffee.com, come visit us and support the community.
Yeah, that actually leads into the question I was going to slide into with 22 minutes left, by the way, so just giving you guys a heads up, which is about fear. Because you're now talking about understanding a piece, and most of what we fear is the unknown. People fear the unknown all the time, which is why change is sometimes difficult. When I'm doing the interviews that I do with MTD, I would say 70% of our job is making someone be less scared in front of a camera. And when we're able to do that, the conversations change, right? But that's with everything. If we can remove, and I would make the discussion even that if you flip on the TV right now, most movies, most sitcoms, most news channels, they're educating through fear of some sort. It's almost in our DNA to think fear first instead of figuring out how to be positive and powerful first and embody that, right? What's going to go wrong before what's going to go right. So how can what kind of advice would you offer? Meaghan, we'll go this way this time. What kind of advice would you offer to help people step out of fear and step into power, to have the courage to do some of the things we're talking about, to rip apart that machine, to find the confidence in something that we were afraid of previously?
Just step into it. That's really the only advice that I have, because you're really not going to know if you can overcome that fear unless you face it. So I hate heights. I'm deathly afraid of them, and not for the reason that you may think. So like when I'm up high and I look over at something, I'm always like, I wonder how it would feel if I would just jump. Not like in a suicidal way, but just like, what if I were to just jump? Like, how would that feel? So I actually went skydiving, and super fun fact, like you can actually jump, and as long as your parachute's good enough, you're not gonna go splat on the ground. And it really helped open up my eyes to like, sometimes it's just something silly holding you back, and you really can't grow or change if you're not willing to sometimes face your fears head on. So I get scared of a lot of things. Like I have 2 little kids, and I might fear that they might get hurt, but I'm trying to let them figure out their own way, and if I have to go to the ER one of these days, that's probably going to happen, but at least it's helping them learn as well too. And I think when you face your fears, it's a big learning experience, right? It's like the same thing if you make a mistake. You can either make a mistake and dwell on it and prevent yourself from growing even further, or you can make a mistake and learn the lesson and be like, okay, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to change it this way and do this way instead. So I just say face it head on, go skydiving. Yeah,
if these roles were reversed and you were interviewing me, that would have been my answer too. anything that I'm scared of, I run toward, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And if it's okay, we're not going to share with everyone else here, but I want to tell you my skydiving story real quick. Nobody's listening, I'm sure. So I also needed to jump out of a plane, but I get really bad motion sickness. So I didn't realize you can do that in the air, and you can. So I jumped out of the plane. Well, before I jumped out of the plane, I had 2 buddies go with me. They jumped out of the plane. You're supposed to go on 3, right? 1, 2, and then you roll out of the plane. Well, they take you on 2 because they're afraid you'll stop at 3 once you get scared. So at 2, you're rolling out of the plane. So I saw my 2 buddies go ahead of me, and I was like, that looks kind of boring. I just spent $300 to do this. Can we do like some flips or something? He's like, absolutely. Are you sure? I'm like, well, I've been a lifeguard for 7 years. I could do it off the diving board. I can darn sure do it here, right? So he's like, all right. He taught me in about 10 seconds, tandem and all that kind of stuff. Taught me in about 10 seconds how to do it. So we jumped out, we're flipping sky, ground, sky. But I didn't really know what I was doing, right? So the parachute read that I was doing it all wrong and popped out early, which gave us about an extra 15 minutes of float time, which means my nausea started to kick in. And I was like, dude, I'm getting ready to get sick. He's like, don't worry, you're not the only one. We've had this happen before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this cord. You're going to turn your head that way. We're going to spin this way, and we're going to spiral like this. And I was like, I'm going to, and I got him a little bit. And then I landed on the ground with ghost white, and my buzzer was like, what happened to you in the air? Yeah. That's my skydive. My first, I went again. I went many times after, but I went.
So there was a spiral of...
Don't picture it, but yes. But yes.
Too late.
I'm glad nobody else was listening. All right, Paul.
I mean, I'm 3 kids. I've been puked on a couple of
Try to bring it back to earth.
Yes, literally back to earth.
Like a puke did. So I think it's what you brought up with making things accessible and involving your son, helping employees. It's one thing for a leader or owner of a business to be all charged up and face their fears and say, we're going to do this new thing. It's entirely different to bring everyone else along, because it's not going to work unless your employees are engaged. So I think it's crucially important to involve them early in even the decision making of which cobot to choose, or which software to choose, or which tool to you want to try out. Because if they're not invested in it, if they don't feel like it's their idea, they're not gonna be all about it. I'll just share one story. We had this was very early. We learned our lesson from it. We were doing demos and was talking to the shop owner. He absolutely loved it. He was all about it. But he lived in California. His shop was across the country, on the other side of the country. And he's like, yep, signed up for ProShop. We went in to do training, do the kickoff meeting, and the first thing out of the teammate's mouth was, what's ProShop? Like, they didn't even know what the meeting was about. And I tell you, that implementation did not succeed. They just dug their heels in like nothing else. And the companies that are the most successful are the ones that bring in different teams to see how it's going to work for them and how are they going to adapt to it. And I have pictures that I've shared of 65-year-old crotchety machinists that were just that the owners thought were going to be just like the worst at technology adoption, and they're, excuse my French, shit-eating grin ear to ear, so excited and so happy because they were involved and involved in the process. So as far as something you can do to make sure that's successful, absolutely, just involve your people, make sure they're bought in, and that's just such an important step.
Yeah, sage advice, honestly. Yeah, I've seen major differences when that happens, exactly. Jason?
So I always go back to vision. That's where I always go to. But so when you watch a movie, most movies or books that you go through have this structure called the hero's journey. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So whenever you're going through this hero's journey, there's always this dilemma of, well, what if he or she is successful? What if he or she goes through a failure? And I think you need to look at the fear of change in much that same way. It's like, okay, well, what does this make possible if I'm successful, and what potentially could happen if I either fail at this change or if I choose not to change at all? And I think that those are two separate, so 3 questions. What if I'm successful? What if I don't change? And what if I fail at changing? And I think if you ask yourself those questions, you can really get a more pragmatic look at what the change is and which you should be fearful of, and I think most of the time you should be fearful of failing at the change or not changing at all. And I think that's again, that's going to always circumvent the pain that you're going to go through in order to actually make the change.
Well, you're my hero, just so you know. So what kind of journey you're on. All right, guys, we have 13/14 minutes left, so I'd like you to divide up the time evenly, and I love to leave on a positive note.
Sure.
And the question I want to ask, pretty much, and I'm going to be long-winded so you can think about the answer, like I always am, right? But is your favorite success story of a company that embraced change and came out on top? Any success story of a shop you've worked with that you can share what they did, how they did it, and Meaghan, if you haven't been into the shop, but I know you do tons of trade shows, just any success story where someone was courageous enough, remove that fear, everything we've been talking about the entire time, but an actual true story of somebody who went through with it, right? And I don't know who wants to start because I'm seeing some blank faces here. I don't see anyone with big shaking heads. Paul, you want to go first?
I can start. There's a lot, but I'll call out one that's actually here today.
I like they like when you do that.
Yeah, Hibschman screw machine products. My friend Chad, he realized, multi-generational business. He's, his parents started it. He's running the business for several years. He realized that the business that he was building was not one that he would feel good about handing off to his kids one day, right? And he said when he took over the business, very paper-based, pretty much no computer systems in the place. He first got QuickBooks. That was a big, new foundational thing that they built on years ago. And then, he decided to implement an ERP system. Fortunately, he chose ProShop. But he realized that there was just too many things about the business that were not sustainable, that were not process-driven, and quite honestly, even joining NTMA was another big step for him. He built a peer group, by coming here, of people he can learn from, and sort of get out of his little bubble. And so anyway, implemented ProShop. It's been and they're focused on continuous improvement. There's just so many things that they have done to really just re-envision what that business looks like. I had him on my podcast not too long ago, to the point where he's now very proud to hand off a sustainable, enduring, profitable, process-driven company that's not a firefight every day. That he would be proud to hand off to his kids.
Is super
and
cool.
I think that's just that concept of being proud enough of your business that you want to, let your kids take it over, instead of saying, you shouldn't get into this business. Go off and do something else, like accounting or something else. So anyway, that was just something that felt really important and powerful, and just a story that I just loved.
Well, you pulled on my heartstrings. Hopefully, some other folks as well. I really enjoyed that story. Yeah, Meaghan, do you have one that you can think of?
No.
Tough to go after that, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't really think of one specific shop because I've talked to so many, and now my ADHD is like full blown, like trying to go through my Rolodex. I can't think of one right now.
Yeah, should we pass this over to Jason and come back to you?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah? Jason?
I don't know if I can.
I'm trying to think of something unique, and this might not be a manufacturing company, but there might be some lessons here. So there was a company, they were an electrical supply distributor, and they realized that there was a lot of consolidation happening in that distribution industry, and same in the industrial supply industry. And so what they decided is that they were going to create like a buying group amongst some local other electrical distributors in order to compete with like the big publicly traded companies. And they created this company called Affiliated Distributors. And what happened was this organization grew and grew and grew to the point where the owners of that electrical supply just started to focus on the parent company, the organization, kind of sort of like an NTMA, but a little bit different, where these organizations could pool all of their strengths together in order to compete with the larger companies. And they ended, now the company does, I think, we are all owners of the conglomerate. As a unit, we do like 50 billion in sales a year.
Wow.
And there's a electrical supply, industrial supply, safety supply, HVAC. There's like all these other kind of like industrial related distribution groups that are part of AD, and we can compete with those companies out there, the larger publicly traded companies, just because this gentleman took a chance to say, how can we work together? And what can we do together in order to help us as a whole compete against, the larger organizations out there? And I think there's a lot to be said about that. And then eventually he grew it to the point where he could sell it back to us as the members of the group. And it's a great, David versus Goliath story. And it helps us to be, competitive in the marketplace. And it makes it so that, smaller and family-owned business can prosper against the larger competitors.
Yeah, another great story. I'm going to share one for you, Meaghan, if that's all right. Did you think of one?
I thought of one.
Okay.
So there's a company, Superior Joining
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Technology. So one of the things that they're a welding company mostly, but they go to trade shows and they look for like the newest and latest and greatest technologies. And then they bought a machine, a laser sintering machine, I think. And then they also invested in like additive manufacturing. So the way that they embrace new technology and try to learn about it has really helped their business grow. And I just had a conversation with Teresa, and I think recently they just got certified for something else dealing with like aviation and aerospace, and they do a lot of inspection, so it's just going to continue helping her grow her company. And she told me that they're buying like 10 more machines or something like that. I might have the number wrong, but because they're willing to just go outside to trade shows all the time and keep up to date, they're able to keep growing their capabilities and their shop and employ more people in their business.
Love it.
So does that count?
Absolutely.
I've got another one now that I think about it. One of our
success stories. Let's forget that clock. Let's just keep sharing them.
One of our clients, TechMax Machining in Itasca, Illinois, they created a vision in a really special niche. I can't really talk about the products that they make, but what I can say is that they are solely focused on everything that is really gigantic. So they're a machine shop, but it has to be really, 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 really big. And they've really created a niche for themselves where just a lot of other people can't compete with them, because they've specialized in that area of just something has to be ultra precision and ultra big. And that's their niche. And they've done a really good job of serving that marketplace. And they're growing like gangbusters, and it's really, transforming them. It takes a long time, to see these things take fruition. But I think once you cast that vision and you make that focus, if you have that long vision, it can really, pay dividends.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to share one as well, which is going to kind of be for anyone who was awake during my keynote. I did mention EBITDA Growth Systems a couple of times. And Paul,
gosh, I owe David an email. I love you, and I'm sorry. And I know you're on my list to call, and I don't know if he's here or not still.
I'm sure he's around here somewhere.
Okay.
So for people who are awake during my keynote, I did mention it a couple of times, and Paul and I, you and I are getting ready to shoot a commercial. This is the second season that you've been a part of with Shop Rescue.
Yep.
And it's one of those success stories I've been able to be a part of firsthand, because for anyone who has not heard of or seen Shop Rescue, we don't film this in 3 days and make things up about success. This is filmed over a year's time. And if there is no success, we share that too. So yeah, we want the success.
Changes.
Yeah. So this shop, this is 500,000 square feet more or less, over 100 machines. This guy inherited the company. His name is Toby from his father. His father sold off some stuff and got some dividends of somewhere in the range of $100 million and bought machine shops as this type of investment. But Toby he does not like to fight with people. He doesn't like controversy. He doesn't want to fire people. And there was just a whole lot of discord on the management side of things. The machines were there. In fact, they bought machines they didn't even need to buy for tax purposes that were sitting idle, not being run. It wasn't about the machines or the capability. It was that there was just so much discord. And EGS went in as a consulting firm who promises to double your profits within 33 years, and ripped it apart. I mean, management was fired. It was really interesting to see. And the really cool part about it is they started this in about February, March of this year, and we're currently where we are now. The company now profited $3 million. That was the turnaround.
Wow.
And it was because someone was brave enough, this gentleman Toby, but we could say someone was brave enough to say, I am struggling, I am suffocating, I need help. And that's one of the most difficult things for anyone to do, is to look in the mirror and ask for help, to ask somebody else for help. And he did that, and in doing so, and then not questioning everything along the way of, I'm not sure that's right, or I'm not sure that's right, or micromanaging what was already screwed up, and believing, well, that's too much, don't tread on me, that kind of thing, right? They trusted Mike and Dave and went with everything they advised and flipped it around in 6 months. That's a success story.
Yeah. And again, you got to ask yourself, what happens if I don't ask for help?
Right. You go under.
Yeah, you go under. Yeah, I mean, even big companies fall. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
see it every day.
I have a story very similar in some ways. Fairly young shop, doing well, economy was good, growing, and 9/11 happened. They were too heavily weighted in aerospace. Pretty much all their work dried up. As most employers didn't want to let anyone go because they're all sort of family. That company got within a couple weeks of insolvency, finally reached out, found an advisor, at their local SBDC and turned that business around and made it out the other side barely.
Wow.
And went on to great success. But that was my company. So,
oh wow!
Yeah.
Way to put a bow on that.
Yeah, way to flip that.
I didn't see that coming.
So, when we started our business, the economy was strong. We thought we were brilliant. We were not brilliant. We were just lucky with the economy. But yeah, deciding to say, you know what, we don't actually know what we're doing. We need some help. That was a hard thing to do, but it was the thing we had to do, and we would have gone out of business otherwise.
And that was my company. That was awesome. Where's the microphone? Just throw your lapel on the floor. That was awesome. All right, 2 minutes left. We're done. Guys, thank you so much for A, being my friend, B, accepting this opportunity to speak with me and sharing with everyone else, being brave enough to be here and share your stories. None of this was practice. Jason, I honor you. Thank you for being the gentleman that you are. You really are my hero. For everyone who stayed throughout this thing, believe in yourself, believe in each other, believe in your communities, believe in manufacturing, be proud of yourselves, continue to preach that good word, and thank you all for being here. I know all of us appreciate you listening to us chat amongst ourselves for the last hour and a half. Have fun tonight, have a few drinks, dress up silly, and we'll see you there.